Hey Elizabeth, I have the unit test review here, so let's go over the questions that you missed. So on the first one, it says that Raphael graphed the functions g of x and f of x, and how many units below the y-intercept of g of x is the y-intercept of f of x. So I'm just going to plot these points here for the y-intercepts. And you wrote -3 units, and I probably can see exactly why you wrote -3 because you're going down or it's underneath. But because it's a distance, we're talking about this distance. Distance is always positive, so that one's just +3 instead of -3. Question 9 says, which shows a graph of a linear equation in standard form ax plus by equals c, where a equals 0, b is positive, and c is negative. So let me scroll. Oh, that's all of it. Okay. So when we look at these, remember that in standard form, that's kind of where you're picking out, it's easy to find the intercepts. So I'm going to write ax plus by equals c. Now it says that a is 0. So if I plug a 0 in here and I multiply it by x, I just get 0 and this whole term goes away. So now we have by equals c. I'm going to do a little bit of rearranging to put it into slope-intercept form because I want you to see that there's no x term. So how do I get y by itself? I would divide both sides by b. And so now you just see that y equals some number. Now let's look at the last two pieces. B is positive and c is negative. So if I take a negative number and I divide it by a positive number, I get a negative number. So I'm just going to write negative c over b. This fraction or this ratio now is going to be negative. So here's what this means. When you don't have an x term in slope-intercept form, it means the line has 0 slope. And so when I look at the answer choices, that's going to be a horizontal line. Both of these lines have 0 slope. Because again, remember, saying that a is 0 causes us to lose that x term. So now I just have y equals some number. This could be a whole number, this could be a fraction, but it's negative. So that means that this is the y-intercept is negative. And you can see here we have a negative y-intercept of 3, where up here you have a positive y-intercept of 4. Both of these lines, horizontal lines, are just y equals some number, where vertical lines are x equals some number. So if it had said that b was 0, it would have been one of the first two answer choices. But since a is 0, again, that causes that x term to go away. Question 12 says, Timmy writes the equation f of x equals 1/4 x minus 1. He then doubles both of the terms on the right side to create the equation g of x equals 1/2 x minus 2. How does the graph of g of x compare to the graph of f of x? So we look at the y-intercept. So the y-intercept here is on g of x is lower. And now let's talk about slope. So slope is rise over run. For f of x, if we start here, we would go up 1 and over 4, up 1 and over 4, up 1 and over 4. And I'm just kind of estimating there. G of x has a slope of 1/2. So we would go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. You can see that this line is actually going to be steeper than this one because you are not running that bottom number. You're running farther horizontally than you are here. So the right choice is that the g of x is steeper. So the bigger the slope, the steeper the line. And 1/2 is bigger than 1/4. And it does have a lower y-intercept, or a smaller, I guess, y-intercept, because -2 is lower on the graph than -1. Then the last one that you missed, what is the equation of the graphed line written in standard form? So again, I always start with either point slope or slope intercept. In this case, slope intercept is going to get you there faster, because if you start in point slope, then you have to go to slope intercept, and then you have to go to standard form. So here we're going to start with slope intercept because I know exactly, whoops, let me switch back to my pen. I know exactly what the y-intercept is. So let's go ahead and write it in slope-intercept form first. That's y equals mx plus b. So my slope, if I count, up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So the slope is positive 1/4. That slope, or that line has positive slope. And the y-intercept is -1. So 1/4 x minus 1. And now I have to get it into standard form. Remember, we have to first move the x term to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 1/4 from both sides. -1/4 x plus y equals -1. And then we have a rule. The rule is there can't be any fractions, and the x term cannot be negative. So in order to get rid of the fraction, I need to multiply by the denominator. So I have to multiply every term by 4. That will get rid of the fraction. But then I also have to get rid of the negative. So I have to multiply that term by a negative number, because a negative times a negative would be a positive. It's only the x term that can't be negative. We don't care about y, and we don't care about the constant in the back, the c term. But we can't have fractions anywhere, and you can't have the x term negative. So now I'm going to move underneath here. -4 times -1/4 is +1, or just x. But now again, I'm multiplying, I have to multiply everything by that -4, or I'm changing the equation. So -4 times y is -4y, and -4 times -1 is +4. So you can see it's this answer choice here. So that's it for this unit test. I will go ahead and reset it for you. Let me know if you have any questions.